Hello, this is Pastor Taylor at Immanuel Lutheran Church in Eastern California, and we are doing The Peak. And so this week, I thought that it would be nice for us to look at the parable that is in our gospel lesson of the week. Since we didn't get a chance to explore that during the service this week, now is the perfect time. And so our parable for this week is found in Matthew chapter 20, verses 1 through 17. It's the parable of the vineyard workers or the orchard pickers, depending on which text you're using, if you would like to look it up and read it. If not, then I'm going to go ahead and give you a synopsis now. So in this parable, Jesus is explaining what the kingdom of heaven looks like. And he tells us this wonderful story about this king who has a vineyard. And he hires some workers to pick his grapes. Some of you might be familiar with this in Easton. And so the workers come and they're picking the grapes, and he realizes it's just not quite getting done when he wants it to. And so he goes out and he finds this other group of workers who's just kind of standing there. And he's like, "Why aren't you working?" And they're like, "Well, nobody's hired us." And he goes, "Okay, well, I'll hire you." And at this point, it's probably midday. And so these workers are like, "Great." And they join in the vineyard harvest. And they're picking grapes, and the harvest gets done, and then all of the workers line up to receive their pay. And those that arrived last are first in line, and they receive 1 denarii, which is a lot of money for that day and time. Well, the workers that are behind them start getting excited because they're like, "Wow, these guys only worked half a day. Like, what am I going to receive?" And they get up there, and they receive the same wages. And they get kind of frustrated and upset with the king. And they're like, "What's up with this? Like, those guys should have gotten paid less than us." And the king is like, "It's my money. And if I want to bless the people that have worked for me, it doesn't matter when they got here. I'm going to bless them." And Jesus ends this parable by saying, "The first shall be last, and the last shall be first." I really like this parable because it challenges us. And I think it's okay for us to admit that. We have a really strong sense of fairness in our culture. And this seems unfair. These people didn't work a whole day. So why are they getting paid the same as those that did? It's upsetting. And so if you view yourself as one of the workers that has worked the whole harvest and is now getting cheated out of more money, it can be really upsetting. But I think it's important for us to resituate who we are in this parable, because a lot of us are the workers that show up a little bit late, that get hired later in the story. And what Jesus is saying here is not that God has like one wage he pays everyone and everyone receives the same thing. He's showing us how generous and merciful our Lord really is. Because the story is about the kingdom of heaven, not a fair wage. The story is about those of us that come to faith later in life, those of us who may leave the faith for a short time and come back. And it's a reminder that our grace is given to us freely, whether or not we've earned it in the eyes of those around us. Because grace is God's to give and not our neighbors. I really, really love this parable. I don't know that I can say it enough because it is so hopeful. I think about my friends that have struggled with the church. I think about my friends that don't know the church. And I think about my friends who have been faithful in the church for their entire lives. And it's a message of hope for all of us because it's a reminder that we are all invited into the resurrection through our Lord Jesus Christ. And that's something I can really get behind. Thank you for joining us this week, and I hope to see you next week. Bye.
I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided Will you decide now to follow